What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I got a little conspiracy theory I wanted to share with y'all. I wanted to see if y'all are on the same page with me after I bring you this. This is big. I mean, it's not Watergate big. You know, it's not JFK assassination big, but it's big. All right, I'm gonna disrupt the podcast world with this one. All right, so let me give you a little backstory, and then I'm gonna take you in to what the conspiracy is, and I'm gonna connect the dots for you. So first of all, you gotta understand a few things about podcasts, at least about podcasts that I listen to, for you to even really understand, or really even maybe care about what I'm about to say. Okay, so I listen to podcasts, and sometimes you can't really call them podcasts because they're almost like produced shows, but they are podcasts. But you can, some of them have a video component. You can watch them on YouTube, whatever. Although I do listen to many podcasts, I do have some like comedy type podcasts that I listen to. And so one of those podcasts I listen to is Tigerbelly. Tigerbelly. I'm gonna draw this out for you so it all makes sense. So Tigerbelly. All right. So Tigerbelly is Bobby Lee's podcast. Bobby Lee's a comedian. He used to be on Mad TV, stand-up comic in LA. He's from San Diego, Korean. He has a podcast with his girlfriend, Kalila, I guess producer, assistant production manager, anyway, Gilbert, and then George, who's like the actual producer of the show. Those are the four that started, and they brought some more people in to assist with the show. So this is a podcast that is shot basically in Bobby's apartment. If you're familiar with Tigerbelly, then you already know what I'm talking about, and I don't need to explain this. But it's a show that's shot in their apartment. They got a space kind of similar to this one, basically. It's a room with some shit on the wall, and they talk about stuff. Okay. As I said, this is a comedic podcast, so Bobby Lee is a comedian. So there's a fair bit of laughing. And what I noticed, though, was that kind of early on in the show, and I might throw some examples up here, actually, now that I'm thinking about this while I'm doing this, but so you can see what I'm talking about. But early on in the show, so they would have it set up in a room, cameras on Bobby's girlfriend sitting next to him. Gilbert guy is off to the right, and George, the producer, is somewhere, like maybe he might be in the room, but he's in the back of the room, or he's in kind of another area. So sometimes they'll throw something in his direction, he'll respond, or he'll come on camera and respond. But a lot of times Bobby will say something funny, and then George will laugh, and you can kind of hear it off in the distance. It's kind of like a faded kind of laugh, and sometimes it gets a reaction from Bobby, right? Because he'll laugh at certain things in certain moments, and Bobby will give that some attention in a comedic way, and at some moments even the laughing is funny itself, because it's like, all right, like he said something so crazy, and you kind of hear an automatic response. So it's kind of like good background noise for the show, I think, at times, right? All right, so you have certain times George laughing in the background, kind of faint, but you can hear it. You can tell he's not particularly mic'd up, so it's not coming through clear, but you can hear it in the background. So another mic is picking it up, but you can hear it in the background. And it provides, I don't know, I think after a while, after you hear it so often, it almost becomes kind of like some comfort noise. All right, now here's where the conspiracy comes in. So you have Tigerbelly, and you have Tigerbelly here, and then you have this organization called All Things Comedy. That's what ATC is for. All Things Comedy. Now, I don't know what the business relationship is of All Things Comedy to Tigerbelly. I know that there's a group of comedians that run All Things Comedy. I can tell you that, from at least from what I heard on Tigerbelly, that Tom Segura is part of that, who has his own podcast. And there are a few other comedians. I don't really remember. I mean, when they've talked about it, it was over a year ago. But I do remember them talking about being a part of All Things Comedy. I think it's like a network of comedians that have this umbrella of podcasts. Like I said, I don't know what the business model is. I think, they funnel guests. So I think if you want to get guests appearances on a number of podcast shows, you'll go through All Things Comedy and they'll probably schedule you or something like that. I'm not sure how it works. I just know Tigerbelly is a part of this network. And I know that Tom Segura is a part of All Things Comedy. Bert Kreischer could be as well. Christina could be as well. I'm not sure. But as you know, or maybe you don't know, but Tom Segura, also a comedian, one of my favorites. And he has a podcast called Your Mom's House with his wife, Christina. He also has one called Two Bears, One Cave with Bert Kreischer. And he has his own podcast as well. Even though I haven't listened to that one too much of late, I've listened to, of late I started listening to Your Mom's House again. I watched it in the past. I'll watch podcasts for a while, it'll drop off, and then I'll pick it up again. So, recently in the last few months, I started watching Your Mom's House and also Two Bears, One Cave. And so, what I've noticed, so again, Tom Segura, maybe Bert Kreischer, both in All Things Comedy. They have their own shows, YMH, and 2B, I'm going to put 1C. All right. So now you see here there's Tigerbelly, All Things Comedy. Now these two podcasts over here that are all kind of connected. Now what I noticed in watching and listening these podcasts lately is that so let's take Your Mom's House for a second. It looks like there is Tom and Christina in a room doing the podcast, and then it looks like in another room, because they have it, that is mic'd up, because I can hear the guys talk. They have production in another room, so they're watching on screens what's going on. I think they're controlling sound and sound or audio and visual to some degree, but they got a nice setup where they got some type of control room, and there's video and mic in there, but it looks like they're in separate rooms. But if you listen through the podcast, kind of in a similar fashion to Tigerbelly, you can hear people in certain moments in the background laughing, which is not ordinary. But as I was listening to the podcast more, it felt like the frequency of the laughs were off. So we go through the podcast, and I would hear laughter in some cases where there wasn't really even anything funny going on. And I noticed it was consistent, but it had the same cadence as George's laughs on Tigerbelly. And so I'm listening, I'm taking notice now, and I'm hearing it more consistently in spots where it really doesn't make sense in some cases. I think in Tigerbelly, in most cases, it kind of made sense. It felt like a reaction, because I was about to laugh and he laughed, or it was so on cue that or the timing was so good that made me laugh, or at least made the experience a little bit funnier. But this seemed a little more on, almost like somebody was pushing a button and then the laughter would come. So it made me think, does Your Mom's House and Two Bears, One Cave have a laugh track? And so if you listen to sitcoms, back in the day, and I guess today as well, on television shows, they'll have laugh tracks. So one good example of that is Seinfeld. As the show's progressing, they cut in laughter as if it's a studio audience laughing at the show. Because in some instances there were studio audiences back in the day. There would be laughter, even though the laughter was on cue. I think laughter was on cue, clapping was on cue. Never been to a production, but I think that's pretty well known. And even when there wasn't a studio audience, then the laughter was injected, right? And kind of, as Ricky Gervais made a reference on Curb Your Enthusiasm, they tell you when to laugh. So what's interesting though is that laugh track is mimicking a studio audience, so it's a lot of people kind of laughing at the same time. You kind of feel like you're a part of it or something. But this is a little different because it's one or maybe one or two people laughing in the case of Your Mom's House and Two Bears, One Cave. And so it made me think that that Tom, Bert, Christina have introduced and perhaps invented the podcast laugh track. So like I said, it's a little bit different from the laugh track on television because it's not an audience. So it might be one or two people with a kind of a hollow sound. So it kind of sounds like it's coming from another room or kind of far off, just somebody kind of in the room that's, the content is so funny, it's making them laugh. But I think in this case, it's not scripted, but they're introducing that laugh at different times. And my guess is because they're, especially Bert, I hear him talk about kind of the mechanics of building these types of shows. I know somebody within that group had to pick up on what was happening with the Tigerbelly show and understood what effect it had on the show itself, and then introduced the laugh track, the podcast laugh track into their show. And so I think, again, by connecting the dots here, you have Tigerbelly, who's a part of All Things Comedy, and you also have Your Mom's House, Two Bears, One Cave, All Things Comedy. And the guys may actually run All Things Comedy, and you have the introduction of the idea, the organic idea of, or I should say the organic effect of having laughter introduced into the podcast on Tigerbelly. I think someone over here, or up here, picked up on it and has introduced the first podcast laugh track into a podcast or video casting series. So, those two podcasts, or maybe All Things Comedy in general, maybe invented the actual laugh track, but it was birthed from Tigerbelly and, of course, the Godfather, Bobby Lee. So, that is my podcast conspiracy theory involving Tigerbelly, Your Mom's House, Two Bears, One Cave, and All Things Comedy. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. If you don't listen to those podcasts and you need something new to listen to, check them out. They're funny. They each have their own distinct style. They are not PG. They are rated mature or rated R, but very good content. And I like all of them as comics. I think they're all funny. But the podcasts are great. The video podcasts are great as well, especially for Your Mom's House, because they do a lot of visuals. They do a lot of audio stuff too, but they do visuals as well. And Two Bears, One Cave are just two funny characters talking to each other for an hour. So very good stuff. That's all I got. I'll be back with another video soon. I'm out.